In today's sharp and witty pilot, famed hedonist and literary rock star Oscar Wilde teams up with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to explore the gritty streets of turn-of-the-century Victorian England, so stay tuned.
Welcome to Popcorn Talk, featuring movie discussion, news, and interviews. Popcorn Talk. We talk movies.
Yes. Deep. You guys Sherlock fans at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Good old Benedict Cumberbatch.
Yep.
That's right, guys. We're reading a procedural today, set in Victorian London, just like Sherlock. And I think it has some of the same vibes as Sherlock, but it's something totally fresh. And the pilot we're reading is called The Strange Case of Oscar Wilde, written by the very smart and very funny Louis Mendiola. This pilot actually just recently won an ATX Fellowship. We've read some other ATX Fellowship award-winning scripts on here, including Darklings by Eileen Shim, which we read last year at some time, which won the award this year. But I think this script sort of shares some of the same universe as well. And I think Louis and Eileen have probably met at this point because they both won that award. So very exciting, guys. Before we get into today's script, I want to let you guys know that this is a table read podcast where we read Hollywood's hottest unproduced pilots and features. And I'm very excited. We have a new actor on the panel today.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Hello.
Danny, introduce yourself and who you'll be playing on the show today.
My name is Danny Royce. You can find me at I am Danny Royce, and I will be reading for O'Brien, Lawson, Bram Stoker, Aberline, Burley Boss, Major Cook, and Policeman.
Awesome.
There you go.
I'm keeping you busy for your first
Seriously,
Right,
though.
doing it all.
initiation. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Andrew Guy. You can find me at Andrew Guy, and today I will be reading for Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Thank God I don't have to say his name. And then the grocer.
The grocer.
Gross.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? I'm Timothy Michael. I am playing Oscar Wilde today. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got. That's all I got.
Hey guys, I'm Roxy Stryer, and I'll be reading Polly, Secretary, and Florence.
Hey guys, I'm Adrienne Snow. You can follow me on Twitter at Miss Adrienne Snow, and I am reading Louisa, among others.
Yes. So it's kind of fun if you guys are literary nerds. You heard some names you recognize, most notably, of course, Bram Stoker, Oscar Wilde, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. But this show really centers around primarily Oscar Wilde and Arthur Conan Doyle. Do you guys have any experience with especially Oscar Wilde? Have you read any of his stuff? Like, what do we know?
When I met Oscar,
It's been forever
Yeah,
since
it's
I've
been a
read
while.
any. I used to go to a bar called Wild in Chicago.
Nice.
That's the last memory I have
Chicago.
of anything Oscar Wilde.
Yeah.
With
I
an
think-
E at the end?
Huh?
Never mind.
did it have any?
I brought that to a whole thing, like a
No,
screeching
yeah,
halt.
with the E at the end, and it was set up to look like a library. So it was like very much.
I didn't know if it was just like a bar named Wild.
Just Wild.
It was inspired
Just a
by
gay
the
club.
Based on the
Oscar
Reese
Wilde.
Witherspoon movie. Okay, so in case you guys didn't know, Oscar Wilde is kind of like the Freddie Mercury of the literary world. Like, he was this wild hedonist, and he was known for well, you'll see in the pilot, but kind of having sex with women and men and kind of everything. And this is to the point where he actually was engaged in 2 obscenity trials and like sodomy trials,
Wow.
accused of homosexuality. And the end of his life is pretty tragic because he sort of suffered a fate based on societal standards of not accepting. And he probably wasn't even necessarily gay. He might have been bisexual. I mean, it's not really our place to say what he was, but he just suffered a very sort of tragic end of his life because of the hedonistic life he lived. But I think he also was very, very famous in his time in the same way that like a Freddie Mercury was sort of famous in the rock world. So I think this script to me does a really, really good job of capturing that energy. And it's obviously a very well-written script, but I loved it especially because of the way it, I think, modernizes and really freshens Victorian England. I think it makes it accessible for readers for today.
For sure.
Yeah. I agree.
So with that, I say we get into it, guys. Oh, just so you know, Louis will be calling in, but we're pre-taping today's episode, so either that will be rolled into today's episode or aired as a separate episode. That's yet to be determined, but it will be clear
At some point.
at some point.
Soon.
Yes, and we're very excited to have Louis when we do. So, guys, this is The Strange Case of Oscar Wilde, pilot episode called The Remarkable Rocket. Exterior, English cliffside day. The rain pours heavily. A desolate woman, 30s, in drab Victorian clothes, stands over a high cliff, deep in thought. She clutches a soaked letter in hand. The black from the ink drips down her withered knuckles.
A touch too long, a gaze too far. She could not bear it anymore, nor could I.
A pair of gloved hands slowly approach the woman and push her over. She screams as she falls to the jagged rocks below.
A piercing bullet to the soul. Love is a war we lose on all grounds. If I could not have her, No one could.
An emotionally wrought baker stands on the cliff looking down. He considers jumping off himself.
Piercing bullet. Why didn't he just shoot her?
Surprised by Wilde's voiceover interruption, the baker stumbles forward, falling to his death. Interior cafe night. Mouths drop within a pompous, pretentious literary circle filled with upper-class writers and critics. Oscar Wilde, 33, a flamboyant and well-dressed writer, butters his croissant with a sharp knife, annoyed. He puffs on a rolled cigarette and wears sunglasses at night. O'Brien, 50s, a desperate Irish writer in expensive clothes, wipes his palms. Lawson, 40s, a stern critic, frowns upset.
Surely a man on a baker's wage could afford a firearm.
Wilde whips out a Colt 45 revolver and several writers gasp.
Why, I bought this Colt 45 for 50 shillings in Boston just last month. I tried to get the price down for 45 shillings a man's for namesake, but the offer fell upon deaf ears. Perhaps the deafness can be attributed to the curious cap covering the frontiersman's ears. Never barter with a man wearing garments made of an animal that looks like a bandit. I'm talking, of course, of the raccoon.
Mr. Wilde, how is this assisting the circle?
Oh, piss off. Why would the baker spend all that time, all that effort, to follow her in torrential downpour? No man in his right mind would exercise all that unnecessary work when a simple carving in a dark alleyway would suffice. It's too much work.
This circle is meant to improve and develop the writer's vision.
And this is what I'm doing. I'm making this blind man see the fault. Well, O'Brien?
Yes, well, the prolonged pursuit in the rain is meant for dramatic effect. To demonstrate his...
Dramatic effect.
Wilde throws his sharp knife against the cafe wall. His intent to stick the knife into the wall fails, and the knife bangs against the wall and drops to the floor.
Oh, fuck.
Wilde tosses his lit cigarette and quickly scoops up the knife off the floor. He sticks the knife to the wall and parades it back to the table. Wilde quickly grabs his Colt 45 and fires. The knife explodes as the wall splinters from the shot, screams off screen as writers scurry away frightened.
Well, how's that for dramatic effect? You don't know love. It isn't a war to lose, it's a disease, a deliberating sickness that renders us incapable of living. It's a curse, a curse.
Wilde sits back down. He finally takes a bite of his buttery croissant, and disgusted he spits it out.
This is the definition of poor taste.
Cut 2. Opening titles over grotesque gargoyles all around London. They vary in size and shape, but they all are gruesome. The final gargoyle holds an expression of curious pain. Almost enjoyment. Match cut 2. A young man, early 20s, skinny and excited, holding the same expression. He's sweating profusely inside a small bedroom, where we see the young man's bare ass rising up and down, pounding. Young man is fucking a prostitute, Polly, 43, plump and confident, who moans proudly, putting on a show. Polly notices the young man is nearing climax, so she moans louder and louder, and the camera pulls back to reveal Wilde sitting on a chair, just watching. Young man screams euphorically as Polly matches his sexual enthusiasm. Young man slinks down, spent, and Polly pats young man's sweaty forehead, almost motherly.
There you go, love. There you go.
Wilde lights his rolled cigarette and he exhales, satisfied. Later, Polly makes the bed as Wilde puffs on his cigarette, sauntering around the room, and the young man is gone.
Sun kisses your face, and they serve the wine in them jars with fancy fruit inside. Magic, pure magic. What's the matter, lad?
The wine you so often daydream about, sangria. It refers to blood.
How romantic.
Wilde inspects a small, dirty painting hanging on the wall.
What is this? I've never seen this.
My brother's painting. Just found it. It's the two of us as children. By the port.
Charming. Watching a ship sink.
It's a whale. He was a rather shit painter.
Polly pours 2 glasses of brandy and offers one to Wilde, who knocks it back instantly.
Was.
Aye. He was hanged a few years back, stabbed his cheating wife over 20 times.
Did he?
Aye, she lived.
We all have our faults.
Wilde hands the empty glass back to Polly. He rubs her shoulder affectionately.
Great performance tonight, Polly.
Exterior, Lyceum Theatre, West End night. A banner of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde hangs. Sold-out placards are placed in front of the ticket box office. Interior Lyceum Theatre night. Richard Mansfield, 31, slim yet strong, as Dr. Jekyll holds a potion in his nervous hands. The entranced crowd watches Mansfield's performance on the edge of their seats.
Here's to a new man and a better world.
Mansfield drinks the potion. A moment later, he screams and stumbles to the ground as the crowd gasps. Growling and spitting, the transformation to the madman known as Mr. Hyde begins. Arthur Conan Doyle, 29, a stocky and cheerful writer, stares amused. Seated next to him is his wife, Louisa, 26, quiet and pregnant, as Louisa shields her eyes as Doyle smiles. Mansfield jumps up, his transformation complete, and the theater crowd screams in unison, frightened. Mr. Hyde is here, and he is a monster. Cut 2. Begin transformation montage. A plume of smoke wafts. Wilde enjoys opium in a dirty den. He grooves, sashaying. B, in a pub, Wilde slams back a pint. He gestures for another one mid-sip. C, laughing with a drunk, Wilde knocks back a shot of brandy. They accidentally knock over empty pint glasses. D, Mansfield as Hyde howls, full of rage, and the theater crowd watches, spellbound. E, hollering, Wilde and drunk sing with the rowdy pub crowd. F, Wilde and drunk exchange punches in a heated argument. G, Hyde murders a victim during the play. H, reconciled, a bloody-nosed Wilde and drunk sniff lines of cocaine. I, Wilde and the drunk embrace in a passionate kiss. J, in yet another violent argument, Wilde knocks out drunk with a meaty right hook. Wilde winces from the punch. K, Hyde succumbs to an agonizing suicide by poison. L, Wilde stumbles down the street holding a bottle of brandy in his hand and smoking a cigarette. End transformation montage. Cut 2, exterior Lyceum Theater night. The excited crowd filters out onto the streets, chatting enthusiastically about the play. Doyle holds Louisa's arm, escorting her like a gentleman.
I have to admit it, this adaptation is better in actuality than the book. It's never the case, Louisa, never.
Oh, hush, you better not tell Robert that.
Stevenson, I may look like a fool seeking a death wish, but I am in the hunt for a long life, my dear. Never cross a writer.
Arthur?
Doyle and Louisa turn around. Bram Stoker, 40s, tall, regal, and built like a bull, emerges from the shadows. He descends down the steps to greet Doyle.
Bram, this is my wife, Louisa. Louisa, this is Abraham Stoker. He is the acting manager of the Lyceum Theatre and a brilliant writer.
Writer, yes. Brilliant. One day, perhaps. I see you are expecting Mrs. Doyle. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Stoker.
And thank you for attending. Please be safe on your way home. There's word the weather is about to take turn for the worse.
Exterior Southampton Street night. Dark clouds brew over an already dark night. Excited, Doyle gestures wildly as Louisa smiles, amused.
This expression of the duality of man, good versus evil, it breathes on your neck like a fueled fiend. He was a monster.
Louisa gasps. Wilde finishes pissing and clumsily buttons up his pants. He grabs his binoculars and continues to spy.
Dear God, that's my interview.
The Woman's World. That is the editor of The Women's World.
Yeah, the one and only Oscar Wilde.
Curious, Doyle looks up at the window Wilde is gazing at. In a lit second-story bedroom, Florence Balcombe, 30s, a fiery, conflicted artist, scribbles down her writings. Doyle looks back at Wilde. Vomit seeps through Wilde's shirt. Doyle steps toward Wilde, but Louisa grabs his arm.
Do not be rude. A quick hello, goodbye, and we're off.
Arthur, he is clearly mad.
Perhaps, but he is also a means com. Good evening, Mr. Wilde. Mr. Wilde? Excuse me, Mr. Wilde.
Startled, Wilde whips around. His bottle falls out of his coat pocket, shattering.
Oi! I still let it drop, you fat lard cunt.
Noticing a shocked Louisa, Wilde goes to remove his hat, but he doesn't have one. He curtsies instead, stumbling a little.
Good evening, milady. Would you care for a look? Is all I can offer as this brute in your company has destroyed everything else.
My deepest apologies. I can bring a bottle tomorrow. We have a meeting to discuss my employment at Woman's World.
We do? Oh, yes. I must say you're a bit wide to be a chimney sweep.
Louisa narrows her eyes with contempt.
I'm actually a writer. My name's Arthur Conan Doyle.
Doyle? What kind of a name is Doyle? Oh, my name's Doyle. My existence is a boil should never spoil.
Louisa huffs, angry. Doyle notices his wife's reaction.
Excuse me, Mr. Wilde.
Louisa walks away.
Just wait one moment. I beg you.
Scoffing, Louisa stares daggers at Wilde. A nervous Doyle approaches Wilde, whose face is stuck in binoculars.
You left her alone. If you truly loved every pore of that creature, you would never leave her alone. The devil could come, swoop in, steal her.
Oh. Strange, I heard you were...
Doyle gestures with his hand daintily, and he quickly stops.
Not that I have a problem with it. I have a confused second cousin.
Wilde smirks and checks out Doyle's ass. Yeah, he isn't his type.
No, I believe you are the one who's confused. But for 5 shillings, I'll put in anywhere.
Pardon?
Louisa storms over to Doyle, scooping him away.
Enough. We do not need this. Take your employment and shove it up your own arse, Mr. Wilde.
Louisa!
I like her. I did not before, I confess.
Come, Arthur. We can find a means elsewhere. Perhaps we can meet with your friend Stoker. He behaved as normal, respectable person.
Stoker? You want Stoker? He'll be right here, dearie. This is his home. This is the woman he crudely stole from me, the motherfucker. Well, he hasn't literally fucked my mother, but I wager he would try if he could. I see you are a motherfucker as well. I, of course, mean it in the most lovely and natural sense.
Bam! Doyle knocks out Wilde with a single powerful jab. Doyle rubs his hands, adjusting the wedding ring on his finger. Louisa rushes over and kicks the unconscious Wilde in the ribs repeatedly.
Louisa!
Exterior, Southampton Street later. The clouds part, revealing a full moon. Wilde comes too groggy. He holds his aching head in pain. His face is bruised and plump from Doyle's punch. Wilde spits out the bad taste from his mouth, and confused, Wilde looks around, gathering his whereabouts. Florence's window is closed. Turning around, a haggard Wilde does a double take as a fleeing, ominous shadow scampers off. Exterior alleyway night. Elsewhere, prostitute Martha Tabram, 39, sweet, distracted, moans loudly against a dark corner wall. A big man is heaving hungrily, panting. His hot breath fills the cold air. In the shadows, someone is watching Tabram and Big Man. The Big Man climaxes inside Tabram, slamming his hand against the wall, and Tabram stares up to the full moon blankly. Later, alone, Tabram rummages through the thrown-out rubbish in the alleyway. She finds a half-eaten apple and wipes off the grit from the exposed side of the fruit. We see a gloved left hand with a knife approach, taking quiet, calculated steps towards Tabram. Tabram stands up, taking a bite from the apple, and unbeknownst to her is a silhouetted figure. Although the face is obscured, we see the figure is wearing a top hat and a coat. Or the iconic Jack the Ripper outfit. Feeling a presence, Tabram turns around. Her throat is instantly slit. She falls to the ground, grabbing her throat, gurgling desperately. The sharp knife rises and plunges deeper into Tabram's body. She tries to scream, but hardly anything is heard. Her vocal cords have been slashed apart. Blood splatters against the wall as Tabram's weak fingers scratch the ground, countering the powerful thrusts. Tabram is stabbed repeatedly, over 30 times, each progressive piercing of flesh more vicious than the last. Interior, Doyle residence day. A knife slices into a plump sausage. Juice from the bloody meat squirts and spills out. Doyle happily chomps on the meat, and a stressed-out Louisa pours Doyle another cup of tea.
We can make do, at least for another couple of months.
He will not remember a thing, my dear. You can recall his way. He was away with the fairies. His self-destruction is on my side.
That is what I'm afraid of.
Exterior, the Woman's World office day. Doyle gingerly passes other gentlemen on the street. He looks up to see a plaque on the building, the Woman's World. Interior, the Woman's World office day. Wilde sits at his desk, his bruised face on it as well. His bleary red eyes are fixated on the two flies on his desk in the middle of intercourse. The door opens. Secretary, 20s, short, nervous, pops her head.
Mr. Wilde?
Off his grunt.
Mr. Doyle's here to see you.
All right, on with it.
Doyle steps in, all smiles. He waits for Wilde to acknowledge him. It doesn't happen. Wilde is still preoccupied with the flies. The flies, however, soon buzz off as Wilde sighs miserably.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall. Do you understand women?
Hello, I'm Arthur Conan Doyle.
An annoyed Wilde stands up and shakes Doyle's hand.
As for understanding women, yes, I do.
Oh, are you a scientist?
No, but I am, was a doctor.
Were you? Brilliant. Take a look at this.
Doyle takes a look at Wilde's bruised face, hiding his guilt.
Oh, what happened?
I was attacked last night. The coward struck when I was not looking.
Cowards. There was more than one, eh?
Clearly, Doyle.
Doyle rubs his fingers along Wilde's face, who cringes. Wilde spots something odd with Doyle's fingers.
Crush a handful of parsley leaves, spread it over, and it'll reduce the pain and decrease the inflammation.
Yes, very good. But which drugs can I take?
It's just a bruise. You don't require any drugs.
So nothing? I can see why you are no longer employed as a doctor. As for your writing employment or lack of, it can continue elsewhere.
Excuse me, why, may I ask?
Oh, you have not put one and one together, have you? Take another look at my face, Boyle.
Close up on Wilde's face. The center of the bruise has a distinctive mark on it, almost like a branding of a G.
Do you recognize the symbol? Take a look at your right middle finger.
Close up on Doyle's finger, a Freemason ring with a G on it.
A G. While many would appreciate the touch of God on their face, I do not.
Others carry this ring as well.
Yes, your lot have no style, but I am fairly certain if I rounded up all the Freemasons, not many would have a bruised knuckle.
Close up on Doyle's bruised knuckle.
Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. I would have been wrong once before. Or should I say wronged?
Mr. Wilde, may I please explain? It's not what you think.
No, but your shoes.
Close up on Doyle's shoes.
Your unsightly shoes have traces of fresh horse shit. I woke up in horse shit. I can see why your detective story did not sell. You cannot detect. Now, please, take yourself, along with your Professor Homeless and Dr. What-it-his name, and fuck off.
Exterior, the Woman's World office day. Smoking a rolled cigarette, Wilde steps out of his office. Groups of people gawk and murmur, huddled around newspapers. Wilde winces from the sunlight and plops his sunglasses on. A newsboy, 9, street savvy and tough, rushes up to Wilde.
Women murdered in Whitechapel.
And I die a little every day. Move, you're getting in the way of...
Wilde whips off his sunglasses and takes a closer look at the front page. He snatches a newspaper off the newsboy.
Martha.
Oi, that's half a penny.
Wilde fumbles in his pockets and hands over a coin. Newsboy stares at the coin, confused. He storms up to Wilde and kicks his leg. Consumed by the story, Wilde ignores it.
Oi!
The newsboy kicks Wilde again. This time, Wilde reacts. He kicks the newsboy back, knocking him down to the ground. Furious, the newsboy dumps his stack of newspapers and whips out a small knife. Wilde spots the tiny blade and laughs.
If I pulled out a blade determined by my length, it would fill the street, child.
The newsboy scoffs. He takes a step closer to Wilde, tiny blade in hand.
I just want me half penny.
What are you going on about? I gave you one, you dwarf.
The newsboy flashes the bottle cap Wilde handed him. Wilde scours his pockets, embarrassed, and has nothing.
Listen, I work for the Woman's World. I'm good for it.
Do I look like a charity?
A half penny is tossed onto the ground. The newsboy scoops it up. Doyle saunters over to Wilde as Newsboy puts away his small knife and picks up the stack of newspapers.
Make sure to thank the missus.
Oh, piss off! Oh, go change your nappy. Change your nappy. Oh, pathetic. I suppose you want to thank you.
No, but I do want to point out that there are two sides to every coin.
What? Was that a joke?
Much like what happened last night.
Oh, you made love to your wife?
Interior cafe day. Doyle fumbles his fingers as he bares his soul, embarrassed. He hasn't even touched his tea.
I'm not a violent man. What I did was wrong, particularly considering your state.
Wilde vigorously reads the paper, ignoring Doyle's confession. Several empty cups rimmed with tea sit on the table. Wilde stubs out a cigarette in one of the cups.
Yes, mistakes, life. Fuck me, she was stabbed over 30 times.
It was my intention to inform you of last night's events.
Wilde slams the paper down, moved by the murder.
Is there anything I can do to repay my aberration? I would very much like to instill balance back.
Balance?
Wilde removes his sunglasses and stares into Doyle's eyes.
Balance? True balance would be stabbing this man 100 times over and decorating the walls with the insides of his head. My apologies. The murderer could very well be a woman.
Did you know this woman?
I did.
I'm sorry.
Why? Did you kill her?
No, I was merely sharing my condolences. Look, I'm certain the police will apprehend the monster who did this.
Wilde scoffs, cackling.
The police. Those mutton shunters are as worthless as your apology. No, time is needed.
Time. Something we could all do more with.
Wilde stares at Doyle like he's a complete idiot. An idea, however, forms in Wilde's head. He opens his mouth, excited.
You are balance. I require time away and you seek it. Are you capable of writing a review of Sullivan's adaptation of Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
I watched it last night.
That is not what I asked, but I suppose it is a start.
Exterior cafe day. Doyle scribbles down notes as Wilde parades down the street.
Speak with the actor Mansfield, grab his thoughts, and if you must, perhaps a sentence or two can be wasted on Irving and Stoker.
Of course. Any mention of Handman's competing adaptation?
Bandman? Is it scandalous? Then, yes, by all means, I require a draft by the end of the week.
End of the week? It's achievable.
Wonderful. Lastly, as you are a stout advocate for balance, I request you donate your pay to repairing my coat, the one you damaged during your violent outburst.
Doyle stops walking. He soaks in the request and huffs.
Yes, I suppose your request is fair.
Fair would be me smashing your head open with a mallet. If your review is not a complete disaster, then we shall discuss further employment. Go forth and conquer, lad.
Wilde waltzes off as Doyle scribbles notes in his notebook. Annoyed, Doyle flips off Wilde. He instantly cringes from the bruised knuckle, and Wilde cackles with laughter off screen.
No, fuck you, Doyle.
Interior, Stoker Residence Day. On a creative roll, Florence scribbles her thoughts into a notebook. She mouths a few lines she has written.
The body of a woman was found dead at George Yard.
Florence turns around, and Stoker emerges from the dark corner of their elegant and decorative bedroom, reading the newspaper.
There were 39 punctured wounds on the body. There appeared to be some doubt about the identity of the deceased. What purpose does 39 wounds serve? It seems inhumane.
Inhumane? Do animals tear their prey into pieces purely for joy? No. Their actions stem from survival. That is human.
Stoker smiles devilishly. He rests his strong hands on Florence's shoulder, grabbing her.
It is dominance, my love, for marking their territory. This is an act. It's a statement.
A knock on the door. A Stoker house servant pops her head in.
Mrs. Stoker?
Please enter.
A house servant hands over a beautiful bouquet of roses. A nervous Florence looks over to Stoker, who appears amused.
These were sent for you, miss.
Thank you. Just there's fine.
The house servant delicately leaves the flowers on a table and leaves. Stoker inspects the flowers, smiling.
What a prick. The rose is full of pricks. Weird. No note, just your name. I wonder who sent these.
Stoker saunters over to Florence's desk and smashes up her writings. Florence claws for the notebook as Stoker reads it.
Those are not ready for reading.
Yes, I can see that. Good day, my love. What to do?
Stoker leaves as Florence sighs, frustrated and disappointed. Interior, Wilde Residence Day. In his swanky home, Wilde reads a letter. He seems affected.
Cyril quite enjoys the ocean air. A renewed sense of life sparkles through his eyes. Perhaps he was a sailor in the past life. As for Vivian, he is desperate to see you. I suppose I am well. Oh, it would be grand to finally set things back in order in a home. Whatever demons you may have.
Enough.
Reveal, Wilde waves off his own house servant. She was reading the letter out loud for Wilde.
What bellyache. Respond back to my wife. Keep it lively, such as the last one you wrote. Perfection.
As you wish, Mr. Wilde.
Wilde continues reading the letter in his hands.
Mr. Wilde, Miss Polly Nichols to see you?
Wilde throws down the letter as Polly approaches him. They embrace. Wilde rubs her back tenderly.
Tough crossword puzzle.
Yes, it is puzzling. I just made a payment, but enough about that, Polly. My deepest sympathy. Martha was a fine woman.
Aye, she was like me sister.
Indeed. I thought you two were sisters the first time I met you. I will miss her contagious smile.
What would possess a man to do that? It was pure hate. And why her? She has no enemies, no money. Me and the girls, as you can imagine, are scared.
Wilde whips out a huge Bowie knife.
Be scared no more.
Polly holds the knife, impressed with its sheer size.
Dear God, where am I going to hide that thing?
Wilde smiles playfully, sneaking a look at Polly's crotch.
I know a spacious sheath.
Polly cackles with laughter.
Oscar, you always know how to make me laugh.
Now, if you will excuse me, pretty Polly, I must attend to work. Please eat whatever you like.
Interior Whitechapel Pub Day. Wilde slams back his pint of ale. He wipes the foam from his mouth as he sighs contented. Wilde's dressed down, and he looks like a lower-class factory worker.
Another of your finest, good sir.
Interior Whitechapel Pub later. A group of drunks hoot and holler as Wilde prances around. Another drunk bangs on a piano.
When I have learned where progress has been made in minor gunnery, when I know more of tactics than a novice in a nunnery, in short, when I've a smattering of elemental strategy, you'll say a better major general has never strategy.
Exterior Whitechapel Pub Day. Doyle walks past the pub, seemingly on a mission.
You'll say a better major general has never strategy. You'll say a better major general has never strategy. You'll say a better major general has never strategy.
Doyle rushes back and stares into the pub, baffled. Wilde is performing The Pirates of Penzance? Interior Whitechapel Pub Day. Dumbfounded, Doyle steps into the rowdy pub and Wilde struts around theatrically, singing merrily.
For my military knowledge, though I'm plucky and adventurous, has only been brought down to the beginning of the century, but still in matters vegetable and animal and mineral, I am the very model of a modern major general.
But still in matters vegetable and animal and mineral, he's still the very model of a modern major general. The piano finishes off the song and Wilde and the drunks hoot. Wilde smacks one of the drunks in the ass as he makes his way to the bar, and Wilde spots an irritated Doyle approaching him.
Doyle? Care for a pint?
No, I would not. Is this what you meant by needing time?
Are you angry?
Oh, can you detect that?
I am in actuality detecting. Martha was murdered around the corner. My aim was to blend in, discover the local hearsay.
You call singing and dancing like that blending in?
Well, yes. I found out Martha was last seen with a major named Cook. As much as I enjoy your company, what are you doing in Whitechapel?
I am doing your work, remember? Apparently Mansfield enjoys the prostitutes of this neighborhood.
Good man. They are wonderful.
Listen, I mean no offense to your detecting, but I implore you to let the authorities solve the crime.
Oh, not this again. Go cry elsewhere. You skillemalink. You actually brought the mutton shunters with you. I told you they are useless.
I did not. Honestly.
Led by Police Inspector Aberline, 45, stern and tough as nails, a small group of policemen approach Wilde and Doyle.
Are you the writer, Oscar Wilde?
He is Wilde. I am untamed.
He is Wilde, officer.
Fuck your mother, Doyle.
Mr. Wilde, I am Police Inspector Frederick Aberline. I would like you to accompany me. I have a few questions to ask you.
Of course, of course. Firstly, yes, your head is much too large for your body.
Aberlin nods, and the policemen circle around Wilde and Doyle.
Mr. Wilde, do you know Martha Tabram?
Yes, if you must know.
Then I insist you come. Her death points directly to you.
Doyle stares at Wilde, stunned. Exterior alleyway day. On the wall, written in blood, is... It is a very dangerous thing to know one's friends. Wilde and Doyle stare at the writing, and Aberlin watches Wilde closely as policemen block the public from the alleyway.
It is ghastly, Police Inspector, but how does it tie back to Wilde?
The Remarkable Rocket.
Pardon?
It is a line from The Remarkable Rocket, one of my children's tales. How do you not know this? It was just published this past May. My book is immensely popular.
Yes, well, I do not have a child yet.
It is about an arrogant, pompous rocket desperate to create a great sensation.
Well, you, unlike my unsophisticated associate, have fine taste.
I have not brought my taste into question, Mr. Wilde. I have several reports of your violent outbursts.
Violent? I am many things, but I am not violent. I'm just...
Let's see. I must stab this man 100 times over and decorate the walls with the insides of his head.
Yes, it was said. However, it was in response to this travesty. Who told you that?
You also fired a pistol in a cafe a few days ago. While there, you criticized the writer. You said his scene was unnecessary, particularly when a simple carving in a dark alleyway would suffice.
Doyle opens his mouth, shocked. Wilde scoffs.
I can count to 33 as well. 39 as well. There were 39 stab wounds, correct? My ability to count must make me a suspect. I must admit my suggestion is a cliche, but there are worse crimes.
Aberlin rolls his head as Wilde points to the wall.
However, the writing is on the wall, Aberlin. It was written by an individual who favors his left hand. Alas, I am right-handed.
Left-handed? How so?
Close up, across the bloody writing, small smudges are found.
See those smudges? When we write, we often use our palm to balance. The murderer's left palm was used to balance his left hand to write.
Let's say you are correct. What is the purpose of this?
The left-handed murderer left his message for me. He was aiming to hurt me, killing a friend of mine.
Interior morgue day. Aberline leads Wilde and Doyle down the large morgue room.
She was hardly a close friend. That is what I find odd. If you were going to murder a good friend, Martha is far down the list.
And who would want to hurt you, Mr. Wilde?
Doyle?
Truth. Everyone. And their mothers.
Wilde smiles, enjoying Doyle's answer.
One last question, Mr. Wilde. Where were you during the time of the murder?
At 2 a.m. Asleep, like a decent human being?
Can someone account for your whereabouts?
Certainly. What is your wife's name again?
Aberlin huffs, not amused. Doyle senses the tension.
The drunk was hogging the beer. hugging the... Excuse me. The drunk was hugging the bear with his couch. A true embarrassment. As warning, Police Inspector, Wilde makes for a poor guest.
Then you can account for him.
Wilde gives Doyle an appreciative glance as they arrive to a table. A body is covered by a cloth.
Dr. Doyle, may I ask you your professional opinion? I apologize about the inconvenience, but I could use some expertise.
You know what? You know what is an inconvenience? Spelling the word inconvenience.
Certainly.
What do you make of this?
Aberlin removes the cloth to reveal Martha Tabram's mangled and mutilated corpse. Wilde stares at the wounds. A look of anger fills his face.
Dear God. It was done hastily, powerful but unsure. A majority of the wounds are superficial, far from organs. It appears the force used grew as later wounds indicated deeper punctures. The murderer became more and more comfortable.
If you two will excuse me, I'm off to inquire about a cook.
Mr. Wilde, do not leave town. And cook? How can he have an appetite?
Exterior Stoker residence day. The sunset casts a reddish light over the cobblestone street. Florence walks along the street, much on her mind.
And I, a heavy interim shall support by his dear absence. Let me go with him.
Othello,
Wilde pops out from his discreet spot.
I'd have taken you for much ado about nothing.
If it is uncertain if Florence blushes, it is uncertain if Florence blushes as the sunset casts everything in a red light, but she is nervous to see Wilde.
Yes, Othello. The Haymarket is putting it on.
You would make a magnificent Desdemona. I always thought you had tremendous style in delivering words. Pity they are not mine. I would have written day and night enough to fill a whole library.
Oscar, you cannot speak to me as such. I am married.
By law. But what does that thing you used to call your heart say?
Good night.
Wilde removes his hat. He's done being a smartass.
Florence, I need a favor.
Then visit one of your friends. I hear they're apt in favors. I apologize. It slipped my mind. I hear the prostitute was a friend.
She was. As a daughter of a lieutenant colonel, you can assist me in finding a major cook. He was the last to see Martha. Please.
Florence notices Wilde's determined, narrowed eyes.
She was just a friend?
If she was someone I truly adored, someone I truly wholeheartedly loved, the sun would chase to shine forever. I can tell you that.
Florence stares at Wilde, conflicted as the sun fully sets. Interior newspaper building day. A crowd of newsboys hover around a locked cage with a large stack of newspapers. The newsboys hold their empty bags and money in their hands, eager to start the working day. Near the back of the crowd is our newsboy who demanded his money from Wilde. A burly boss, 40s, hairy, and still drunk from the night before, walks past, noticing the newsboy. He grabs him, drags him away from the crowd.
Hey, get over here, boy. You still owe me for 50 copies.
Burly boss punches newsboy into a dark, secluded corner.
I said I would give it to you by the end of the week.
It is the end of the week.
No, tonight is the end of the week.
Burly boss slaps newsboy hard across the face.
Don't you talk back. I want me pay.
Burly boss looks around, no one is nearby, and he unbuttons his pants. Newsboy looks on, horrified.
I'm going to get me pay.
No, help!
Bam! Burly boss punches Newsboy in the face. The young boy, dazed, is barely conscious. Eager, Burly boss pulls down his pants, flips the newsboy over, and pulls his pants down. Burly boss begins fondling Newsboy, and after a moment, Burly boss jerks back, shocked.
What is this? You're not a boy?
Slash! Newsboy slashes Burly boss's face with her small knife, slicing his eye open. Burly boss tumbles backward.
Ah, me eye. Come back here.
Newsboy pulls her pants up and rushes off for her dear life. Interior, the Woman's World office day. Wilde reads a letter. He has a stack of papers on his desk. Doyle knocks on the door, poking his head in.
Good morning.
Yes, come in.
Wilde crumples up his letter and chucks it into a basket.
Boston. They would like me to lecture at the university again.
Oh, are you a professor?
I am as much a professor as you are a Dr. Doyle. So, no.
I am. I am a doctor.
Give me the review.
Doyle hesitantly passes over his rough draft. Wilde skims it.
Keep in mind, it was unfinished. I still need to meet with Mansfeld. He's agreed to see me tomorrow afternoon.
Batman's version of Jekyll and Hyde. Is this play closing? Only after 2 performances?
Yes, Stevenson's publisher gave sole authorization to Irving. Batman's play will be shut down.
Batman will not be a happy man. And he will not be a quiet man, mark my words. In the meanwhile, paint him more as a victim.
Doyle stares at Wilde, confused.
Batman is the victim. Irving and Stoker are the offenders. Bullies really pushing Batman out. Other than that, your review is Satisfactory.
Will it be enough to procure further employment?
The door opens as the secretary looks in.
A note for you, Mr. Wilde?
Wilde waves to the secretary. He reads the note, nodding.
Cook is staying with a cousin above the George Yard pub.
Wilde grabs his coat and hat.
You are still after the murderer.
Exterior, the Woman's World office day. Doyle chases after Wilde as Wilde lights up a cigarette.
Pardon, I do not mean to repeat myself, but will I have employment in the coming weeks? Surely I have proven to be up to scratch.
More like an itch. As much as I will regret this for years to come, consider yourself part of the woman's world. For now.
This is splendid. Thank you.
Hush now, you're embarrassing me.
Of course. Is there anything I can do to return the gesture?
Not from you. Hold on, what are your plans for the evening? I could do with an extra buddy. Whitechapel at night is quite social.
Oh, it's Louisa's birthday. My wife?
Oh, you have one of those too. Of course you do, you're an idiot. No matter, I shall be accompanied by others.
Wilde tips his hat, bidding farewell to Doyle.
I shall see you on Monday, which reminds me, try on one of your wife's dresses this weekend.
Pardon, why?
You now work at the Woman's World, you fuckwit. Your next article will be on a woman's fashion.
Interior, leaky lounge day. Inside a crowded and wet lounge filled with two families of sick adults and children, Newsboy looks after her mother. Mother moans and coughs. Newsboy pats her forehead with a damp cloth. Mother coughs again as Newsboy wipes her mouth. Blood. Newsboy stares at the blood, saddened. Interior outhouse day. Hidden from everyone, Newsboy removes her cap. She takes out her small knife and cuts her uneven hair to appear even more boyish. Exterior East End Streets day. A grocer pushes Newsboy away from the fruit cart.
I can help. I'm good. I'm looking for honest work.
I've no need for you.
Exterior East End Streets later. Wilde struts down the street chomping on an apple. Defeated, Newsboy sits on the street crying. Wilde notices and continues on, and a moment later, Wilde returns.
Well, I cannot very well hand out my hard-earned money if you do not have your cap out, can I?
Newsboy holds out her cap. Wilde drops a couple of coins in.
Thank you.
Ugh, disgusting. Why aren't you selling papers, Newsboy?
I was fired. And I owe money. And my mom is sick, and...
Oh, fuck me. Today is filled with regrets. Listen, are you up for some work? I could do with an extra pair of eyes tonight. What do you think of the police?
I fucking hate them.
Wilde chucks his half-eaten apple into the newsboy's lap.
Perfect. You're hired.
Exterior Whitechapel pub night. Newsboy stands in front of the rowdy pub. She holds a whistle in her little hands.
While I chat inside, I need you to keep a watch out for them mutton shunters. You see them or anything peculiar, you blow on the whistle.
Interior Whitechapel pub night. In a smoky corner, a dressed-down Wilde and big man, a.k.a. Major Cook, sip their ales.
Roughly 1 in the morning. As you can imagine, I did not want anyone to know my involvement. I am married, after all.
And I will not tell a soul. You still have my word, and all the ale you can drink.
Major Cook and Wilde clink beer glasses. Wilde gestures the bartender for another round.
Did you notice any strange individuals?
There was one man who did appear to be lost.
Lost?
Exterior Whitechapel streets night. Polly twirls her shawl, trying to entice several men who walk past her. It's a slow night. No one is even looking at her, except for one particular figure across the street in the shadows.
Yes. He was too, how should I say, well dressed for the area.
A horse and carriage trots past. Although his face is obscured, the figure wears a long coat and a top hat. The figure holds a sharp knife. Interior Whitechapel pub night.
What do you mean?
He wore a top hat. He had a nice long coat made of fine garment.
What was he doing?
Perhaps he was waiting for her. I did not think anything of it at the time. Surely a well-dressed man would not commit this crime.
A well-dressed man is capable of anything.
Exterior Whitechapel streets night. The figure steps out from the shadows and approaches Polly.
A need for some warmth on this cold night, love.
Is your name Polly? Polly Nichols?
Polly stares, unable to see a face. She takes a step back.
No, sorry. Actually, I'm done for the night.
The figure whips out a sharp knife. It shines in the moonlight. Polly screams as she fumbles, pulling out the Bowie knife Wilde gave her. Scared, she drops it, and the figure attacks Polly. The figure's knife nearly slices her neck as she falls to the ground. Polly reaches for the Bowie knife as the figure kicks her in the face. The Bowie knife slides away from Polly's hands. The figure hovers over her. The figure raises the knife. Slice. The figure screams. The figure's finger has been sliced. Doyle steps in front of the hobbled Polly holding the knife.
Justice will be served. Wait! You come back here.
Exterior Whitechapel pub night. Newsboy rubs her cold hands.
Stop! Somebody stop that man!
Curious, Newsboy cranes her neck over. The figure runs past. Doyle soon follows through, holding the Bowie knife.
He must not get away. It's the murderer! The murderer!
Startled Newsboy recognizes Doyle. She blows on her whistle. A moment later, Wilde bursts out of the pub.
Your mate, he went that way.
Mate, which way?
Wilde quickly hands his beer to Newsboy and races off.
Do not drink a drop, I will know.
Exterior Whitechapel Streets night. Wilde is surprisingly limber. He catches up to Doyle.
Doyle, the well-dressed man.
Wilde pulls out his Colt 45 and doesn't hesitate in taking a shot at the figure. The bullet smashes into a wall. The figure turns a corner and Wilde and Doyle turn the same corner but lose track of the figure. Doyle looks up and down the streets, baffled. Wilde soon looks up and takes another shot, missing. The figure has climbed up on the rooftops. Interior Whitechapel rooftops night. Wilde and Doyle continue their pursuit as they jump from roof to roof. Doyle loses the Bowie knife during one jump. The figure jumps over a wide gap and both Wilde and Doyle stop. Wilde takes a few step backs and sprints and he makes the jump. Hesitant, Doyle takes a breath and jumps with all his might and he barely makes the wide jump. Wilde takes another shot at the figure but the bullet misses and blows off a large chunk of a chimney. The figure races over a narrow plank between two buildings and upon reaching the other side, the figure kicks off a plank. He keeps running as Wilde reaches the gap. It's much too wild to jump over. It's much too wide to jump over, but Wilde considers it.
No, you'll never make it.
Agitated, Wilde fires off several more shots in the figure's direction. Clunk, clunk, clunk. His chamber is now empty.
Fuck!
Exterior Whitechapel Streets night. Several policemen question bystanders, taking down notes. A sleepy Aberline and a couple of policemen surround Wilde, Doyle, and Polly. The newsboy sits nearby.
I see. And then the well-dressed man attacked you with a knife. This is when Dr. Doyle attacked his finger.
Attacked is a strong word. I would rather prefer defended.
What were you doing in Whitechapel tonight? His presence makes sense.
As does yours.
Well?
Interior fancy restaurant night flashback. Doyle and Louisa share a dessert. Louisa appears annoyed, whereas Doyle is animated.
And with that, he was able to pinpoint the murderer's preferred hand. A left hand.
How extraordinary.
How embarrassing. It is your birthday, and I'm blabbering on and on about Oscar Wilde. How do you like your birthday present, dear?
Louisa looks down at her stylish evening gown, smiling.
I adore it. The bows are beautiful, and I must say, having no bustle to fasten is quite exhilarating.
Yes, it's quite fashionable.
And I suppose it would be rather easy to take off as well.
Yes, come, I must get you home.
To the waiter.
The bill, please. Oh, and a nice bottle of red to take away.
Oh, Arthur.
Yes, it is coming together. I have my angle. Wilde will be pleased, particularly when I hand him over a bottle of wine. He likes his drop.
Louisa stares in disbelief. Are you fucking kidding me? Exterior Whitechapel Streets night.
Why, you left your wife on her birthday to discuss dresses with him and to give him a bottle of wine.
Where is the wine?
Doyle reaches into his pocket, pulling shards of a wet glass.
Oh, how crushing.
I wanted to thank him, police inspector. To be a writer is a daydream, but to be an employed writer is a dream come true.
Your wildest dream, perhaps.
Wildest, you make me laugh, Oscar.
I don't understand, but it's on paper now.
Pointing to the newsboy.
What is his role on this odd stage?
Wilde snaps his fingers. Newsboy cautiously walks over. Wilde grabs his beer and hands over some coins to the newsboy.
Job well done. Off you go.
To Aberline.
Don't spill a drop. Didn't spill a drop. I highly recommend the child if you're ever in the search of steady hands.
Thank you for the tip. All right, that is all I need for now. Ma'am, would you like someone to escort you home?
She's accounted for, Aberline. Piss off.
Aberline rolls his eyes and he waves his policemen away. Exterior Polly's home night. Polly chuckles as Wilde and Doyle escort her back home.
Thank you, lads.
Of course. Now, Polly, I beg you to stay in for a few nights.
How am I going to make money?
No point in hiding this from you. I believe the murderer killed Martha because you two share a resemblance. Martha was a mistake.
Doyle nods, agreeing.
Why? What have I done?
Given me the purest friendship a man can ask for. The murderer wants to hurt me where it counts.
Wilde grabs Polly's hand delicately.
Until I can unmask this monster, I beg you stay inside.
Polly begrudgingly nods as she enters her home.
Good night, Mrs. Nichols. Miss.
Wilde pats Doyle's shoulder and opens his mouth to speak, but nothing comes out. Doyle nods, accepting Wilde's speechless gratitude for saving Polly. Exterior Lyceum Theater day. Notebook in hand, Doyle strides up to the steps of the entrance. Interior Lyceum Theater day. A stagehand, 30s, muscular like a bodyguard, opens the door.
Good morning, Dr. Doyle. Right this way.
The stagehand guides Doyle through the theater as they arrive to the stage. Irving, 50s, small in stature but dominating presence, is in the middle of lecturing Mansfield. Stoker stands, writing notes diligently into his notebook.
Evil is much more than spitting and growling like a beast. It is faith. It is intuition. Be the devil, lad.
Who is this?
A writer from the woman's world. He's here for an interview. Dr. Doyle, please, you have 10.
Thank you. Why this play?
Because it is truth. We all harbor darkness within us. Some of us suppress, but it is still there.
Every man is good and bad.
There are two sides to every coin. What you define as good and bad is just scratching the surface.
Doyle spots something that suddenly makes him uneasy. Blood is seeping through Mansfield's bandaged finger.
What happened to your finger there?
Mansfield quickly covers up his hand.
Yes, truly embarrassing. A paper cut.
That is a truly large paper cut.
It was a rather large piece of paper.
I see. What's your purpose here in Whitechapel?
Mansfield shoots Irving a tense look, desperate for help.
What does Whitechapel have to do with our play? Stoker, get him the fuck out now.
One last question, if you please.
Get him out now!
The stagehand powerfully grabs Doyle as Stoker walks with him.
I hope you have enough for your article, Dr. Doyle.
I certainly have had enough.
Out of curiosity, what was your last question?
What is evil?
This is an odd question to address for your publication. Odd, but worthwhile. Good day, Dr. Doyle.
Ooh. Exterior, the Woman's World office day. Wilde steps out of his office holding a small bag. He snaps his fingers and Newsboy runs up to Wilde.
G'day, Mr. Wilde.
Never mind that. Did you deliver the flowers? And what did you say?
I couldn't hear from outside. She didn't look happy.
It still beats. Here, deliver this bag of food to Polly Nichols.
Newsboy grabs the bag but doesn't move.
Well? Oh, yes. You're not a charity.
Exterior Whitechapel Street's day. Humming, Newsboy approaches Polly's place of residence. She, however, quickly ducks out of the way when she notices someone walking towards her. The disfigured aftermath from losing his eye has made her former burly boss appear oafishly frightening. Scared, Newsboy cowers, hiding. Burly boss eventually passes by her, unaware of her presence. Newsboy sighs, relieved. Interior, Stoker's study day. Florence enjoys a plate of cheese, bread, and meat inside the spacious room. It's filled with thousands of books. The Stoker house servant opens the door and walks in.
Mr. Wilde, to see you, Mrs. Stoker? I'm in.
The house servant escorts Wilde into the room and leaves.
I wanted to thank you for your help in finding Cook.
You are welcome.
Did you receive the flowers I sent? You deserve flowers every day. How is your writing coming along?
Oscar, what can I do for you?
I wrote something last night. As long as the seagull loved the sea. As long as the sunflower sought the sun.
Confused, Florence stares into Wilde's hopeful eyes.
I do not understand the world's infatuation with the sun.
Wilde turns around. Stoker removes his long coat and top hat.
The sea, certainly, but the sun. It does nothing but burn. I much prefer the night.
What is the origin of Stoker? One who lurks in the shadows?
You truly flatter me. How's Constance, your wife?
Define wife. I'm curious to know what you define as wife.
Oscar was just leaving.
In the circumstance you somehow offend a man in the matters of a duel, do you carry a firearm?
Wilde pulls out his Colt 45 and Florence's mouth drops.
Weird. I didn't know the Wild West arrived in London.
Don't use my name.
I do not need firearms, Mr. Wilde. I get my point across in other ways.
Stoker snatches a knife off of Florence's plate and swiftly chucks it. This sticks cleanly to the wall, an expert throw.
I can do that.
Be my guest.
Child's play.
Indeed.
Well, I'm off. Good day, Florence. Stoker, go fuck yourself.
How do you do that again? You are the expert in such matters, I hear.
Wilde smiles patronizingly. He knocks Stoker's top hat off the table on his way out.
Just to be perfectly clear, your husband ruined your wall. And life, he's sucking the life out of you.
Stoker smiles devilishly at Wilde, waving farewell. Interior, the Woman's World office day. Wilde practices throwing his knife against the office wall. Not having much luck, finally after a few attempts, he gets it thrown to stick. He's elated. Doyle walks in holding a document.
Good work. Farewell. I am busy.
I have a theory on who the murderer is.
Is it Stoker?
No, but I believe the murderer does associate himself with Stoker. It's Mansfield.
The actor? What are you on about?
Well, he visits Whitechapel often, he enjoys prostitutes quite a bit, and he had a cut on his finger, the same finger that I sliced.
In truth?
In truth. Look, I know you think them useless, but we should inform the authorities.
Nonsense! I will take matters into my own hands.
By killing him? No, that is not by the book.
The book! I write my own fucking book, Doyle. I will protect Polly.
I will not dirty my hands.
Why would you?
I saved Polly's life. I would like to make sure it stays saved. And it does make for good research.
Ah, there's the true motive.
I will help in revealing the murderer, but I will not strike.
Well, to be fair, you do not have the best aim to begin with. You were inches from the murderer and you merely sliced his finger.
Wilde chuckles, Doyle rolls his eye.
Very well. What is the plan?
Interior Wilde kitchen day. Wilde and Polly devour a large breakfast.
Well, if our well-dressed murderer wants a Polly, we give him a Polly.
Pardon?
Exterior Doyle residence day. Doyle rubs his face thinking. His notebook open, he's in the middle of a creative writing exercise. Scribbled along the page is the title, The Sign of Four.
He has failed twice. Our murderer will be much more apprehensive, but if we tie an opportunity with a bow, he will unwrap it.
A circled question haunts Doyle. How do Holmes and Watson capture the villain?
At the end of a month, a rather large celebration will be held in honor of the Grand Duchess of Mecklenburg-Strelitz.
Louisa walks in with the newspaper. She hands it to Doyle. Date headline, August 31st, 1888. Celebration for Grand Duchess of Mecklenburg-Strelitz. Exterior Town Square day. Standing at a podium, Wilde recites his work passionately to a crowd. Amongst the amused crowd, the Grand Duchess herself, 66, cantankerous yet quite enjoying herself, applauds Wilde.
I will speak during the event, and Polly will accompany me. This will gain the attention of our murderer.
Nearby, a waiter walks by with a tray of glasses of bubbles. A well-dressed Polly swaps an empty glass for a full one.
Polly and I will partake in the celebrations. Filled with drink and feeling secure and safe within the crowd, we let our guards down.
Exterior Town Square night. Drunken aristocrats laugh as Wilde recounts a tale.
My need to be at the center will overpower my need to protect Polly.
Drunk, Polly walks past. She tugs on Wilde's coat sleeve. His focus still on a fancy circle. Wilde quickly pecks Polly's cheek, and she stumbles away, waving goodbye. Exterior London streets night. Exterior London streets night. Polly parades down the streets, and boom! Polly almost falls to the ground from shock, and she looks up to the sky as another firework bursts into the air. Polly laughs to herself, pleasantly gazing up at the colorful array of light above her.
This will lead our murderer to the hunt. He will not be able to control himself.
Another rocket bursts. Looming behind Polly, we see the silhouette of the figure.
And where will you be?
Exterior Town Square night. Wilde sits with an aristocratic woman at a table filled with people. Underneath the table, unbeknownst to all of them around, Wilde fingers the aristocratic woman. She screams and moans with delight.
Keeping my trigger finger warm.
Interior, the Women's World Office day. Doyle's mouth drops as Wilde throws another knife against the wall. It sticks and Wilde rejoices.
I do not understand. You say you love Stoker's wife, which in itself is baffling to me, but you partake in carnal acts with others.
You can do many things with a gun other than hunt. I'm taking in a bit of target practice, for when I do decide to hunt, I will not miss.
Doyle shakes his head, confused.
Go on. What happens next?
Exterior London dock night. The fireworks continue to illuminate the London sky. Polly drinks from a small bottle. Finished, she tosses it away. The figure follows in the shadows, eager. Polly turns into a dark corner swallowed by darkness. The figure follows. Exterior London dock corner night. The figure notices a confused Polly staring ahead, lost.
We let him attack.
This time, the figure takes no chances. The gloved hand pulls out a sharp knife and stabs her in the back.
Attack!
Her back turned to the figure, Polly falls to the ground. The figure reaches for the knife stuck in Polly's back and tries to pull it out, but he's having trouble doing so.
Yes, this will let his defense down. He will not know what hits him.
Suddenly, a knife slices the figure's leg. The figure stumbles backward, shocked. Polly turns around, or rather, Wilde in a fat suit, makeup, and women's clothing. Exterior London dock corner before. In the darkness, Doyle grabs Polly as Wilde in the fat suit steps out, carrying a stumbling Polly.
He will not expect a switch.
Exterior London dock corner night. Wilde throws the knife he sliced at the figure. The handle smacks the figure in the chest. Wilde flings off the fat suit to reveal a vest full of sharp knives. Wilde tosses another. The figure gets hit by the side of the knife. Annoyed, he tosses another knife, And this time, it sticks. The figure falls backwards, a knife stuck in his gut. Exterior London streets night. Doyle leads Polly back home to Whitechapel.
You will take Polly back home as I take care of Mansfield. The murderer caught, Polly safe, the case is closed.
Exterior London Dock Corner night. Grunting, the figure gets up and tries to run.
But what if something is to go wrong? Too many variables of chance.
A half a dozen knives knock the figure around before one finally spears him in the back of the knee, disabling him.
Chance. I always believed I had a fighting chance in life, Doyle, and I expect it to continue.
Wilde whips out his Colt 45 and the figure holds up his gloved hand in defense.
Stop.
Wilde's mouth drops when he looks up at the figure's face. The figure is not Mansfield. The figure is O'Brien.
O'Brien? You did all this because I gave your story a harsh critique.
Harsh? Go to hell.
Wilde kicks the knife out of O'Brien's gut and O'Brien grunts.
You destroyed me in there. I had invited a publisher to the meeting. He was to publish my story.
And he would have wasted his money. I commend you for your passion, but you fucked with the wrong man.
No, you fucked with the world. I might not ruin you, but someone will. You have made many enemies.
Wilde cocks his Colt 45.
Anything else, love?
Love. Love is a fleeting hunger in one's stomach.
Oh, fuck me. Those are your last words.
Expecting a gunshot, O'Brien closes his eyes tightly. A few moments pass. O'Brien slowly opens his eyes. Wilde is staring up at the sky. Curious, O'Brien looks up to the sky. Nothing, just smoke from the fireworks. Wilde continues staring at the sky, transfixed. O'Brien stares at him, confused. A moment later, Wilde's eyes widen. A rocket flies high up into the sky. Just as the rocket reaches its peak, Wilde takes a step closer to the puzzled O'Brien. The rocket bursts just as Wilde fires his Colt 45 point blank into O'Brien's face. Half of O'Brien's face splatters against the concrete wall. His skull exposed, O'Brien slumps down to the ground, dead. Exterior, London Canal night. Quietly rolling O'Brien's wrapped corpse in a cart to the side of the canal, Wilde is careful to stay in the shadows. A drunk couple walks along the bridge above, causing Wilde to stay hidden for a few moments. Safe, Wilde sneaks over to a small box under the bridge. He cracks it open, pulling out a heavy anchor. Wilde struggles pulling it out, grunting, and he eventually ties it to O'Brien's ankle. With a great heaving force, Wilde pushes the anchor over the canal. The anchor and O'Brien's corpse sink to the bottom. Relieved, Wilde strikes a match and smokes one of his rolled cigarettes, or half of one. The cigarette is broken in half. Spying, Newsboy watches Wilde leave the canal, affected. Interior, the Woman's World office day. Wilde throws another knife against the wall. The handle hits the wall as it ricochets wildly, almost hitting Doyle.
And that's it. You're going to kill a man and live as nothing happened.
Well, I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you.
Wilde chucks as he throws another knife. It sticks to the wall. Doyle is not impressed. Exterior Whitechapel streets night. Wilde swigs from a bottle and wipes his mouth content. A whistle off screen startles Wilde. It is followed by several more desperate whistles, and Wilde rushes toward the whistles. Exterior Polly's home night. Rounding the corner towards Polly's place, Wilde is surprised to see a policeman standing in front of Doyle. Sitting on the ground, Doyle holds his bloodied head, crying.
Sir, wait where you are.
Doyle, what happened? Where's Polly?
I'm so sorry, Oscar. I did not see it coming.
Wilde looks off towards down the street. A couple of policemen hovering over a crumpled body. One of the policemen turns away from the body and vomits. Wilde takes off as the policeman reaches for him in vain.
Sir, you cannot go in there.
Wilde passes the vomiting policeman as he meets the shocked policeman holding a lantern. A look of despair fills Wilde's face when he looks down.
No.
On the ground below him, Polly, his dear friend, has been savagely murdered. Her throat has been sliced twice and her abdomen mutilated with one deep, jagged wound. Glimpses of her savage death flash in Wilde's mind. He backs away disoriented. Wilde looks back at Doyle, who sobs miserably. Confused, Wilde looks up to the dark clouds above. He falls to the ground on his knees and cries out in agony. Exterior cemetery day. A group of prostitutes wipe their tears. A priest reads from the Bible. They all stand in front of a freshly buried grave. The weather matches the mood, gray, cold, and wet. Off, nearby, standing secluded, Wilde watches the funeral somber. Behind him, Doyle holds an umbrella over himself and the newsboy. Exterior Polly's grave day. The prostitutes and the priest leave Wilde. Doyle and the newsboy walk down to the grave. Passing them, Wilde tips his hat to tips his hat to the prostitutes who smile and acknowledge him. Wilde lays down a bright bouquet of flowers at Polly's grave.
I will find whoever did this, my dear. While I had my heart broken years before this tragedy, whatever pieces were left have been stolen.
Oscar?
Wilde turns around to see a Florence holding a flower.
Florence.
My deepest condolences. I know she meant a great deal to you. I've come to pay my respects.
Florence lays down her flower on the grave.
Sleep well, Miss Nichols. I hope they catch whoever did this, solve her mystery. My thoughts are with you.
Florence walks off. Wilde chases after her.
Florence, why did you leave me? Please, I need to know.
In truth, I cannot remember why. All I can remember is being happy. Our times were truly happy, but you must forget them.
Oh, I never will. As long as my heart beats, I never will.
Florence stares into Wilde's strong-willed eyes. She clears her throat and nods, leaving him. With Florence long gone, Doyle and Newsboy approach Wilde.
Newsboy, make sure she gets home.
Wilde hands the newsboy a sharp knife. Newsboy tips her hat and rushes after Florence.
You gave the boy a knife. What would you like to do next?
Well, Doyle, we have a paper to run. We must keep it informative and entertaining. The woman's world is a literary urgency to us all.
Yes, of course, but what of this? There's another murder.
Wilde strikes a match and lights a rolled cigarette.
Well, Doyle, we are each our own devil, and we make this world our hell. I intend on spreading the flame. I will burn down this city to avenge this tragedy.
Certainly, of course. That was a bit dramatic, even for you, though.
Wilde chuckles. He waves Doyle over as they walk together down the dark road.
Oh, Doyle, you have not seen anything yet.
Fade to black. Woo! All right, guys, we will be right back, and we will get to interview this brilliant writer, Louis Mendiola, so stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Unproduced Table Read. For those of you viewing our YouTube, you can see that we miraculously changed clothes very fast. And we're Sans, Danny, and Roxy, and Andrew, which is fine because I have Tim and Adrian here. Glad to have you guys. And most importantly, we have our writer, Louis Mendiola, here. Louis, can you hear us in New Zealand?
I can hear you.
Awesome.
Good.
Louis, we're so excited to have you. What time is it there in New Zealand right now?
6 in the morning on Saturday.
6 in the morning on Saturday. Nice.
Yeah.
It's a Friday morning here, so we so appreciate you being available, Louis.
Louis, what's it like?
Thank you for having me.
What's it like? Yeah, what's it like in the future, Louis?
The future at the moment, as you can probably see back here, it's pretty dark. But,
Oh, no.
we'll change that.
I want to talk about this script, Louis, because I love it. I'm such a literary nerd, so right away, even the title had me hooked. But I think before we talk about the actual writing, I want to hear about your interest in Oscar Wilde and sort of this whole literary scene.
Oh, Oscar Wilde. I think he's kind of like, he's a rock star to me. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that movie Velvet Goldmine, but there's that intro to the film where there's like an alien dropped off in an orphanage, and that alien turns out to be Oscar Wilde at school. And they ask what he wants to be when he grows up, and he says he wants to be a rock star. And that's always stayed with me. Like, just because he's so, I don't know, important, like, with his writings. And I really dig, like, the Dorian Gray story, and then, of course, the importance of being earnest. But he's just, I don't know, he's such a big figure, I think, for a lot of people, and for me as well.
Do you feel like you grew up on, like, were you, like, a big novel reader? Did you like this specific time in literary history? Or, I'm just curious. It's a very specific interest.
Yeah. Well, my dad, when I was like 5 years old, he got me like a bunch of books, like The Strange Case of Jekyll and Hyde and Jules Verne books when I wanted Nintendo games instead. But gave me those, and I ended up reading them, and I loved them. You know, they were really cool. They were dark and scary and interesting and fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because, of course, in this story, you pair Oscar Wilde with Arthur Conan Doyle, which I think is such a fun choice. And it's obviously a clear reference to the Sherlock Holmes kind of buddy procedural. But I'm wondering, from an actual historical perspective, did Oscar Wilde and Arthur Conan Doyle know each other?
They did. They met like a year after the Jack the Ripper murders happened at some like literary convention when they were both working on the sign of 4 for Doyle, and Wilde was writing, starting up the Dorian Gray stuff. and they met, and apparently didn't get along at all. Like Wilde thought he was too kind of up himself, Doyle, and Doyle thought that Wilde was really kind of extravagant and too pompous.
Yeah. So I guess that's the perfect launching ground for this kind of story, though.
Yeah, totally, because they just have different perspectives of the world. I mean, and the script that I wrote, I made Doyle a little bit more naive, but almost kind of like looking for more inspiration, trying to perfect his writing, where I think Doyle in real life already kind of had his way set.
Yeah.
But yeah, but they do make a really good pairing, just because their outlooks on the world are quite different.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's fun because it has the essence of sort of this buddy procedural, straight man, crazy man story that's so common, and not only this time period, but now. Are you a big fan of, like, I sort of did get shades of Sherlock on BBC. Like, are you a fan of this kind of storytelling?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was definitely influenced by, the Sherlock, the Benedict Cumberbatch character, and also a bit by Hugh Laurie on House. Like, kind of his, I don't know. That one was particularly his character, just because he was so smart and always got onto things, but he was also quite dismissive to the people around him, but he also cared about them. Like, he was really conflicted, and I feel like that was quite the right approach to take Oscar Wilde, was kind of like the House way.
Yeah. I love it. It's such a fun... I mean, Tim, having played Oscar Wilde, I'm sure you enjoyed that kind of snarky writing.
I mean, having done research on Oscar Wilde, he seemed like a pretty out there kind of character. My question for you, Lewis, is where did you get the inspiration to infuse Oscar Wilde into mystery? Because he was never really about that, and you kind of gave him this like Sherlock Holmes kind of characteristic. What was your decision on that?
That all came about because of Florence Balcombe. Because I always found her quite interesting, because I always wanted to write something about her. And when I discovered that, because I first heard about her through Bram Stoker, because she held the rights to the Dracula franchise, or the book really, and she was fighting people for the Nosferatu film that came out, and there was copyright issues. Anyway, I found about her in my film class, and I was like, man, she's pretty interesting. Then I found out she was Oscar Wilde's former fiance as well, and I was like, whoa, she went out with Oscar Wilde and Bram Stoker. That's crazy. that's amazing, you know, like two of these literary kind of figures. And I was like, wow, she's such an interesting character. So that kind of came about, like, with that kind of perspective of Oscar trying to, I don't know, the theme of trying to figure out or come to terms with your first love. I think that still, like, really resonates with a lot of people this day. Like, people always think, like, but the one who got away. And I think I wanted to implement that with Oscar Wilde. But then I also was thinking about that era and all those people in London at the time during the Jack the Ripper murders. And I was like, wow, Wilde was there. Doyle was there. Lewis Carroll was there. And then the people, you know, there's a bunch of theories, of course. There's so many theories about Jack the Ripper. Some even said that Doyle could have been Jack the Ripper because he was a doctor, so he knew how to do these precision kind of techniques with knives and whatnot. So there was just a lot of information there about that era, and I was like, wow, Oscar Wilde could have been there. And if we put him there trying to chase up Florence Balcombe, because Bram Stoker was actually the theater manager for that Jekyll and Hyde theater production there. And the cool thing about that was that a lot of people thought that Richard Mansfield, the lead actor, could have been a suspect for Jack the Ripper. So it just seemed like a lot of things circled around Jack the Ripper and all these people there. And then, so once I infused it with Oscar chasing Florence Balcombe, I kind of came together, and then the more research I did, I'm like, man, that's so cool. I got to add that in.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, like, narratively, do you plan on structuring this like a week-to-week procedural, fans can tune in when they want, or do you want to have a serialized arc through the seasons?
Can I say both?
Yeah, you can. A lot of shows do both, especially now. So I'd love to hear your, like, sort of your process on structuring, and maybe we only read the pilot today, but maybe season out planning too.
Yeah. So, like, I mean, the cool thing is, like, after this first episode, you know, like, it could come, word of mouth gets out. I mean, that Wilde and Doyle can help out with investigations, or they come across that. So they can do these week-to-week kind of cases they take on. But I think Wilde is really determined to figure out who murdered his friends. So that's going to be kind of like overarching over the first season, is trying to figure out essentially who is Jack the Ripper, while also coming to terms with the relationship he has with Florence Falcone. But yeah, I do see kind of these episodes being broken up with like a murder of the week or a mystery of the week being solved with Wilde and Doyle, and the fun they'll have arguing with one another. And then, of course, trying to figure out who Jack the Ripper is.
Cool.
And do you think with some of the murder mysteries or the arc of the season that you'll do like true crime, like actual serial killers of that time? Because there were a lot of different murders, and like I think there was like on a different podcast, Lore, they talked about how like there was a theory of like vampires in that during that time as well. And so do you think you'd reach into that kind of based in some type of realistic mythology as well?
Oh, absolutely. I prefer to go that route, because there's so much stuff that you can, I'm still looking up. I'm still like finding out cool things about that Victorian era London and all these different kind of weird cults and beliefs that people had. So anything that I can bring in that's truthful, truth-based, facts-based, I want to definitely put in there. I think that's more interesting. Of course, you exaggerate to be a little bit more dramatic than, for the show, but like anything that you can add that's fact-based, all for me.
Nice.
One of my favorite things about this script is it's obviously very well written and elegantly written, so it has the feel of sort of this like BBC masterpiece type of procedural, but it's also kind of dirty and R-rated and I want to hear about your approach to tone, because I think the boring version of this pilot is kind of snooty and like whitewashed, but this version is kind of nasty in a way I really like.
For me, that's my perception of Oscar Wilde in this story is that, going back to the house thing, he's a bit crude, he's a bit crass, but he's also kind, and he's kind of conflicted about that as well. Like, he doesn't want to show kindness because he finds it to be a bit of weakness, but like with the newsboy, when he decides to bring the newsboy into the fold, he's really kind. It's almost like a father figure to the newsboy. And I think bringing that crassness, bringing the way he speaks with some of the prostitutes, he is crass, but I think there's a connection there with the crassness that he finds with kind of like the supposed lower class of that era. He relates to everyone. That's what this Oscar Wilde thing is. He comes across to, doesn't matter where you come from, low class, high class, that he's going to relate. And I think that's part of the beauty of Oscar Wilde in this kind of take,
I think that's one of the beautiful characteristics that you did capture of Oscar Wilde in this script, is that he is so non-judgmental, that he's friends with everybody, except for, if you really think about it, people who are on his level, because they're pompous and they're the real pompous ones. He's actually more down to earth, but he just likes to put on a front. I love that.
He constantly makes fun of the upper class in most of his writings.
Yeah, exactly. That's cool that you guys got that. That's what it is. It's kind of like, he feels more human with the supposed lower class.
Speaking of tone, I love how funny the script is. It's clear, it's dark and it's gritty, and ultimately it does feel like it's kind of like a mystery-driven drama, but it's very, very funny. And I'm wondering, what your approach to comedy is. Do you get jokes in your first draft? Do you go back and punch it up? I'd love to hear you speak on that.
Oh, definitely punch it up, because I think when you try to write comedy, it's you kind of think about it kind of doing stand-up, but the beauty of it being a writer is that you get to go back and back and back and really fix it up until it's really good. Because stand-up would be, I've never done it, but it'd be ridiculously hard, I think, just going out there and trying it first go and not be able to hit rewind. But you can do that as a writer with comedy, is that you can go back and punch it up, and punch it up. And I think with Wilde, just coming up with, when you read Wilde's quotes, like any of his quotes, they're just so fun and just so exciting and mischievous. And I was like, what would Wilde do in this situation? It's kind of like, what would Jesus do? What would Wilde do?
Nice.
And so it's kind of like that's the approach I took to his kind of, and I also felt like it was him, integrated. It wasn't forced, and I could see some people might be put off by Wilde in general, but I love him. Like he's great. Like, and I feel that he feels real in this.
Speaking of your comedy toward Oscar Wilde, you did have a few gay jokes in there, and if anybody knows the backstory of Oscar Wilde, he was, you know, bisexual or whatever. Gay, whatever you wanted to call it back then. Where did you toe the line on the gay jokes? I know you obviously didn't bash us over the head with it, but did you have more in previous scripts, or did you want to include more, but then you were like hesitant about it?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because like back then, you know, that was, I mean, obviously because Wilde was arrested for that.
Right. And prosecuted.
Yeah, I didn't take any conscious, approach towards it. Like obviously when Doyle first meets Wilde outside of Florence's place, that he's like, oh, I thought you were, and he makes that dainty reference with his hand. I wasn't going for laughs there, but like, yeah, I mean, with Wilde, I just think he's so free, but he's also he keeps it like he slaps like a drunk's ass in a pub in Whitechapel, you know, but it's kind of like no one sees it. So he's not open with it, but I wanted to take that, I guess, quote unquote gay humor and just kind of, I don't know, almost make it not casual, really nonchalant with it.
Well, in the script, one of the cutaways was him making out with one of the drunks. Now, I thought it was a male, so I was curious as to how far you were going or willing to go with that part of his life.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because it's so dramatic what happens to him, and then afterwards, just like the fall of grace from him. It's just, oh wow, it's so sad what happened to him. He died penniless in France just because of his sexual orientation. It was quite sad. Like I'd like to integrate that, you know, like as much as I can, but then also you have to think about longevity of the series. But if I can incorporate that, that'd be awesome, because I think it still resonates really, really well today about like sexual orientation, because you know we still get prejudice about that.
Yeah.
So I love the ensemble of literary figures in this story. I was an English major. I'm such a nerd for this stuff. But I'm wondering, are you planning on incorporating any other like major literary figures from the time, or any American writers or anything?
Well, yeah, I want to throw in some painters. There was like Whistler, you know, the guy who painted Whistler's mother.
Yeah.
Apparently he had all these kind of big creative circle parties. And apparently he was like the wittiest one, like, and Wilde was always kind of like, oh, you know, second fiddle to this guy. You know? And I was like, that could be a lot of fun, bringing that guy in, Whistler. And of course, there's also Lewis Carroll. And Lewis Carroll was also a suspect for the Jack the Ripper murders. And he's quite an interesting guy. So bringing in Lewis Carroll would be awesome. And there's a few other authors out there, too, that I think there was... I'm going to butcher his name, so please forgive me. Rudyard Kipling, the guy who did the Jungle Book.
Rudyard Kipling, yeah.
Rudyard.
He was around there too, so like, and I'm pretty sure there's a few other ones, but it's rich with people there. So, and Vincent Van Gogh, there's like, oh my God, there's a great kind of theory about him being Jack the Ripper and escape, because at the time he was at I guess what you would call like a mental asylum, and they said that he would escape and go to London to kill and then come back to his mental asylum. Wrote this theory, and I was like, that's crazy. But like, I'd love to see Vince Van Gogh break out of the mental asylum to come party in London and then go back.
Gosh, I want to see this show so bad, because it's such a fun opportunity for even guest actors to come in. You know, Vincent shows up for one episode. We have Lewis Carroll one episode. This is a show I want to see made.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Me too.
Oh, yes. I was like, well, I blanked my question, so I'll just do the other question that I was going to have. Wait, I can bring it back. Oh, okay, got it. So the with the Newsboy, why did you decide to make the Newsboy an undercover girl? Like,
I've always wanted to bring like a girl in the mix there, and someone who's pretending to be a boy, because back then boys were the tough guys, so she has to put on this kind of mask, this male mask so much. But I thought like bringing in a young girl who gets inspired by Wilde and Doyle to become something bigger would be quite cool. Almost like I mean, this thinking seasons ahead, but like, it'd be cool to have like a Newsboy spin-off, because I think she could be like such a cool hero. And I haven't quite developed her fully in the sense like, I'd like her to be like a big literary figure too. Cause I was looking at people like cause there's not a lot of female authors of female painters back then. I was like, oh man, who could she turn out to be? Like, because her identity is not known at the moment. And, there's like Agatha Christie, but she's like 10 years after the fact. So I'm toying with the idea of her still kind of playing with the male mask, and she takes on being another big male figure in history. And, but I'm still developing her because I think she's probably the character I really want to get right, because she's like the aftermath of what happens with Wilde and Doyle. She becomes the new hero. She's such an important character for me in the story.
It's really
so I'm still finding out where she's going to end up, but she's probably.
There is a writer that did pretend to be a man, George
Eliot. Is that
George
right?
was it or George? It's a different last name.
He wrote Middlemarch.
Yeah, but it was actually a woman. So I can't remember. I think it might have been either a little bit after Oscar Wilde or at the same time. But there is that does exist. There is a woman who pretended to be a man.
Absolutely. Like you can probably see that throughout history. Like this going back to what was that? The McCarthyism era. Where like screenwriters had to go with different aliases and names so they can still come up with stuff, but they couldn't use their real names. And I'm like, that's quite scary, especially in today's kind of climate as well, that I'm like, people have to kind of use different names to get their messages across. And I feel like Newsboy could be such a prominent character with that kind of, narrative, really.
Yeah. I mean, even in today's society, J.K. Rowling didn't use her real name because she was afraid that they wouldn't publish her because she was a woman.
Yeah.
So I definitely think you're onto something there.
I mean, my name's Adrian, so that my mother didn't want me to be persecuted for being a woman.
Wow.
She was like, just on your resume, it's always heavy.
That's so sad, man. I can't believe it still goes on today.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So I have a question for you. Besides Oscar Wilde, because obviously you think he's a rock star and you were very inspired by him to write this, who was your other favorite character to write in this script?
Oh boy, Doyle, because I just think about how Wilde would react to anything he said, because Doyle's kind of like this naive, thinks people are good, goes by the books. Like him, there's my favorite line of his is like when Aberline is interviewing, not interrogating, but questioning them after that attack by on Polly the second time. That he's like, oh, and then you attacked the attacker and sliced his finger, and he's like, I'd rather much you say defended. He's kind of he's really kind of like by the books, and he wants everything to be, on par with like what should be going on.
Yeah. In terms of
sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, no. In terms of writing, when you were writing Doyle, were you worried that he was going to be swallowed up by Wilde in your writing? Did you struggle with that? Because Wilde is such an out there character and Doyle is not?
Kind of, but I also felt Doyle grounded the whole scenario because, Wilde on his own could just go rampant. But I think, in a way, they kind of need each other. Like, Doyle kind of, anchors Wilde during the whole investigative process. I think Wilde on his own would do, anything that needs to be done. That's his approach. Where but being coupled with Doyle, he's kind of, all right, we'll do it this way, that way. It's short because it's the right way to go. So in a way, it's kind of his conscious almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a good. Yeah. Doyle
good balance.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying it's a good balance, and you really captured that.
Cool.
So the buddy procedural is such an important piece of television, and a lot of writers try to approach this buddy, dynamic with detectives, and I'm wondering what advice you have for writers who are approaching such a well-trod trope to make it unique and make it their own.
Okay. Well, obviously they got to have conflict. The two buddies have to have whether the perspective or the personalities, they just have to be conflicting, but they also have to have the same goal. Going on on a darker aspect, you see True Detective, and you see kind of the Woody Harrelson, Matthew McConaughey characters are quite different on how they look at the world.
Yeah.
But they have a common goal, And I feel like whenever you're writing two buddy kind of partners, buddy cop kind of thing, they have to want the same thing, even if they're completely different. The classic one is like Family Man and then a kind of so-called womanizer, but they still want to, keep the world safe from crime. My approach is making them something that you would want to watch on screen. Like anytime I write, is just like after I reread stuff, any of my scenes, I'm like, do I enjoy this? Does this make me laugh? Does this make me kind of want to see the next scene? Do I care about these people? Or do they sound like by the book kind of thing? So I think that's my most important thing. Is it interesting? With structure, obviously you want it to kind of build up towards something, but structure you can play with. But my main thing is it, hopefully it's not boring.
Yeah.
That's what I want. Yeah.
I love that. Do you guys have anything else before we let Lewis make his way?
Well, Andrew usually asks this question. Andrew, who plays Doyle. But have you ever heard this read before?
No, and that was really good. I really loved hearing it out loud by all the actors. It was fantastic. Thank you, by the way. But like catching it with the table read, there's so many cool little instances where I'm like, oh wow, there could be more. Like with the secretary, like Oscar's secretary, the second time, she was played so meekly, and I loved it. I'm like, there could be more development there with the secretary. Like she could actually get involved later on and have a bigger part, because I was like, that was funny the way that was delivered. Like she was kind of creeping in, like, Mr. Wilde, someone here to see you, and I was like, wow, that's great. So table reads are so fantastically amazing because you get to see things that you normally wouldn't, as just reading it over and over. Hearing it like that was fantastic. Like that could be bigger. That's cool.
Yeah, well, you pretty much answered my question and my next one.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's good.
That's great.
Well, Lewis, we can't thank you enough for coming on. I really, really like this script. It's so sharply written, and it's like just personally the kind of show I would love. I know it would be in my queue if this was on TV. So do you have anything else you're working on? And if it's just this, what's the best place for people to reach you?
Oh, I am working on a couple of web series. There's one called Sue Generous, and it's, let's see if I can get the acronyms right. Please forgive me if I don't get it right. LGBTIQA web series that's on, right, it's SueGenerousWebseries.com, and it's like these 5-minute kind of bite-sized episodes about people, dating out there with characters we normally wouldn't see. But yeah, I am working on other things. I'm applying to the upcoming Blacklist Macro Lab for people of color. That seems like a really cool venue for new stories, so we don't get the same old.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. So what's the best place for producers to reach you if they want to snatch this thing up?
My email address.
Great.
It's do you want me to say it, or do you
Feel
got
free.
it? Or?
Yeah. This is your opportunity.
Oh, cool. Thanks, dude. All right, so if you want to contact me for this amazing script, please contact me at lewisdmendiola@gmail.com.
Perfect. And that's Mendiola.
That is it. Yes.
All right, Lewis. Well, you're welcome back anytime. I love your voice as a writer, and this was a fun interview, so I really appreciate it. And if you're ever in the States, we'll get a coffee or something.
Yeah.
Definitely, man. Definitely. I would love to see you guys.
All right, thanks a lot. We'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Sweet. Sounds good, guys.
Have a good day.
All right, guys. This has been the Unproduced Table Read here on AfterBuzz TV. Today, actually on the Popcorn Talk Network, sister network to AfterBuzz TV. Today we read The Strange Case of Oscar Wilde, written by Louis Mendiola, who we just talked to. If you like today's script, we read another kind of literary-driven, very different in tone, but excellently written script called Darklings, written by Eileen Shim. So I would definitely recommend that episode. And if you guys want to connect with me online, you can do that at Jeffrey C. Graham. How about you guys?
If you guys do check out Darklings, I also play Oscar Wilde there. Fun stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just,
Oscar Wilde.
Oscar Wilde type. I am Timothy Michael. You guys can find me everywhere at I am Timothy Mike.
And I'm Adrian Snow. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Miss Adrian Snow.
Guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll be here next week. We're reading a female-driven kind of period Silicon Valley piece called Silicon Curve, and we will have the writer in studio. So That's next week, Friday at 10 a.m. here on the Unproduced Table Read. As always, thanks for tuning in.
Bye, guys.
From producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire Popcorn Talk Network, we would like to thank you for tuning in. For questions or comments, be sure to visit popcorntalk.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of the Popcorn Talk Network. The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Popcorn Talk Network or its owners or principals.